Footage shows a drone being shot down over NATO territory for the first time. After the smoke cleared, nobody could say with certainty whose drone it was. The clips are brief. The first shows a French Rafale fighter releasing one of its missiles over eastern Latvia, a bright trail of smoke crossing the sky before a detonation appears seconds later. The second shows the aftermath of the incident from a different angle, a separate trail visible in the background. Analysts have not yet confirmed what it is. The entire ordeal unfolded just past 9:20 a.m. on June 8, 2026, less than 20 miles from the nearest Russian border, and the French military and Lithuania's defense ministry both confirmed it as the first footage of its kind ever recorded over NATO-owned skies. The fighter involved is part of Baltic air policing. This mission has run continuously since 2004, when Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania joined NATO without the air forces needed to protect their own skies. Allied nations rotate jets into the region to do it for them, keeping aircraft on quick reaction alert around the clock. For 20 years, the job was almost always the same. Intercept Russian military aircraft deliberately flying near NATO airspace, with no flight plans filed, no transponders broadcasting, no radio contact, recklessly probing a response without technically crossing a border. Though cheap drones drifting in from an active war zone were never part of that equation, they are now. Latvia's official position is that the drone was redirected into its airspace by Russian electronic warfare jamming, knocked off its original path, and crossed the border unintentionally. NATO confirmed that jamming in the region is well documented and can pose serious safety risks, including to civil aviation. But the alliance never actually verified the drone's origin, noting the circumstances remained under review. That very carefully worded answer is worth sitting with. Only 3 weeks before, on May 19th, a Romanian F-16 operating under the same Baltic air policing mission shot down a drone over Estonia. That one was Ukrainian. It had crossed the border through the same mechanism, Russian jamming pushing it off course. The previous fall, NATO fighters shot down at least 3 Russian drones over Poland, after 19 reported violations of Polish airspace in a single night. Polish authorities asserted that these drones did not veer off course accidentally, but were deliberately targeted at Alliance territory. The Alliance is now destroying strays from both sides of a war it is not fighting, and contending with the possibility that not all of them are strays. Worst of all, it's costing them millions. The Mica missile the Rafale fired is a beyond visual range weapon with a reported maximum range of around 37 miles. It costs over $1 million per shot. The drone it intercepted likely cost a few thousand. France is already responding to that calculation. Trials are underway on a pod carrying 24 laser-guided 68mm rockets, designed to give the Rafale a far cheaper answer to low-cost drone threats, with deployment targeted for summer 2026, a clear and public acknowledgement that the current cost-exchange ratio could not hold. The rockets fix the financial problem. What they do not fix is the identification problem. As long-range drones from both sides of the conflict keep reaching airspace NATO is obligated to protect, the Alliance is being asked to make real-time targeting decisions about objects it cannot always verify, over populated areas, under rules of engagement written for a completely different era. Production of the Tupolev Tu-22M long-range strike bomber ended in 1993. No factory can build more. Every airframe that exists is the entire supply. And now, the fleet that cannot be replaced is shrinking. On June 15, 2026, one of them suddenly entered a steep nose-down dive over the Irkutsk region of Siberia, disappearing behind the tree line, and left a column of black smoke where it crashed. Videos published to social media showed what happened in mere seconds. The aircraft enters its dive, the tree line swallows it, and the smoke rises. Russia's defense ministry stated the 4-man crew ejected and survived, but that account has been disputed. At the time, the aircraft was on a scheduled training flight, carrying no combat load, descending toward Belaya Air Force Base, roughly 50 kilometers away, when the preliminary cause, identified as engine failure, completely took over. The Tu-22M3 backfire is a swing-wing Soviet missile carrier that Russia has used throughout the Ukraine war to launch powerful Kh-22 and 32 cruise missiles at targets from standoff range inside Russian airspace. Though the first instinct when a Russian military aircraft crashes is to read it as a military unraveling, it is not that simple. What does engine failure on approach actually mean for a crew flying one of those aircraft? The backfire comes in low and heavy, wings forward, with almost no altitude margin to recover. A falling engine at that moment closes the window for ejection in mere seconds. The NK-25 engines powering these jets are aging. Spare parts do not appear on demand because the war needs more sorties than the logistics chain was ever designed to support. Every flight sign-off is a judgment call on an aircraft that was never meant to still be flying. This is now the third Tu-22M3 loss in the Irkutsk region in under 2 years. All followed an almost identical profile: a non-combat training flight, a technical failure, crew ejection, and one pilot lost. 2 of the 3 crashes occurred with no enemy involvement. But mechanical failure is not the only thing shrinking this fleet. During Operation Spiderweb in the summer of 2025, a coordinated wave of Ukrainian long-range drones struck Russian bomber bases deep in the rear for the first time, including Belaya, the same base this aircraft was returning to. Satellite imagery confirmed Tu-22M3 is destroyed on the tarmac, and a haven that geography had made Russians feel untouchable for decades is no longer. Now, commanders have to maintain an aging fleet, facing simultaneous attrition from cheap drones on the ground and mechanical failures in the air, with no ability to replace either loss. Concrete estimates of what remains vary widely, since no outside observer can verify Russia's true readiness numbers. Paper counts suggest roughly 41 to 50 airframes still exist, but realistic combat-ready figures are assessed to be considerably lower. The most aggressive Ukrainian analysis argues Russia has lost more than 70% of its flyable backfires since the invasion. This is part of a growing pattern in Russia, but also around the world. The very same day the Tu-22M3 went down over Siberia, on the other side of the world, a B-52 Stratofortress crashed shortly after takeoff at Edwards Air Force Base in California, taking the lives of all 8 people on board, a mixed crew of military personnel, government civilians, and Boeing contractors. Just like the other incident, there's no footage of the crash itself, only the aftermath. The aircraft was on a radar modernization test flight, part of the B-52J upgrade program, designed to keep the 1960s-era bomber flying into the 2050s with new Rolls-Royce engines and updated avionics. Its replacement, the B-21 Raider stealth bomber, is in production, but it's designed to replace the B-1 and B-2 first, with the B-52 potentially following in the 2040s at only 7 aircraft per year. Russia's long-range standoff strike capability has not collapsed just yet. Tu-22M3s are still airborne. Kh-22s are still capable of reaching Ukrainian cities. But the fleet that carries them can only become smaller and smaller, and at some point, the math forces a question no military planner wants to answer out loud. What do you spend an irreplaceable long-range asset on? And most importantly, when do you stop spending it? "11 A-10 Warthogs that spent months hunting Iranian targets just landed at RAF Lakenheath in England, and everything the US government chose not to say about that war is painted directly onto their noses for anyone with a camera to read. It was June 12, 2026, when aviation photographer Andrew McKelvey showed up at the fence line of RAF Lakenheath to capture the arrival of the Warthogs, a routine transatlantic stop for the 75th Fighter Squadron on their way home to Moody Air Force Base in Georgia after months deployed in Jordan. Each one carries its own personality on the nose. Nintendo characters, Macho Man, the Reaper. But these had new ones, recently added after Operation Epic Fury, the American air campaign against Iran that the Pentagon acknowledged but never fully explained. A symbol for each weapon dropped, a small painting for each target destroyed, revealing more and more details than any official briefing or government release. But it's the mission tally that makes these photographs worth studying carefully. The symbols record the weapons each jet fired against Iranian targets: small diameter bombs, GBU-12 Paveway laser-guided bombs, APKWS laser-guided rockets, AGM-65 Maverick air-to-surface missiles, miniature air-launch decoys used to saturate Iranian air defenses, joint direct attack munitions, and the A-10 signature GAU-8 cannon. Alongside the weapon tallies sit target kill marks, a pair of boats, and a truck accompanied by a mushroom cloud, indicating a secondary explosion large enough that the crew considered it worth commemorating separately. During Operation Epic Fury, these aircraft hunted Iranian Navy vessels in the Strait of Hormuz, struck Iranian proxy forces in Iraq and Syria, and flew missions for which the U.S. government has provided almost no operational detail publicly. One jet carries 3 markings that together tell a story the Pentagon has never fully explained. An F-15E tail silhouette, the green footprints of the Air Force pararescue jumpers, and their motto, "So others may live." Those 3 symbols point to a single operation. During Epic Fury, an F-15E Strike Eagle was shot down over Iran. A rescue package was assembled and launched to recover the crew inside Iranian territory. The A-10s flew in the Sandy role, providing low-altitude armed escort cover for the rescue aircraft. During that mission, one A-10 was hit by Iranian fire and crashed. The pilot survived. That loss and that rescue never received a formal public spotlight from the Defense Department. The aircraft that flew it came home and painted what happened on the nose instead. That institutional contradiction is one the Air Force has been unable to resolve for years. The service has consistently argued that the A-10 is already too old, too slow, and too exposed to survive in a modern, contested environment. Congress has blocked retirement attempts repeatedly. An amendment added to the House Armed Services Committee's version of this year's National Defense Authorization Act requires the Air Force to sustain A-10 training, testing, maintenance, and operational expertise through the jet's planned retirement date. The government that conducted Operation Epic Fury has not released a comprehensive account of what was done, what was lost, or what was destroyed. A jet that flew against Iranian air defenses absorbed a direct hit inside Iranian territory and accumulated a weapons expenditure record spanning boats, ground vehicles, and proxy infrastructure across multiple countries is still scheduled for retirement. Congress is still blocking it, and the most complete record of what it did in a real war is painted on 11 nose cones at RAF Lakenheath. While American forces were striking Iranian targets, a Chinese company was broadcasting their exact locations to the world. Stealth fighters at an Israeli airbase, the USS Gerald R. Ford at sea, support aircraft in Saudi Arabia, not hacked, not leaked, posted openly on social media for anyone to see. When we look at the United States response, the more important question is not what China published, it is why publishing it was so easy, and why stopping it proved so difficult. Miservision is a Chinese technology company that does something no spy agency has ever managed to do openly. It publishes real-time tracking data for foreign military assets on social media. It is not a state intelligence operation. It takes commercially available satellite photographs, layers in public aircraft and ship tracking data, and runs them through AI models designed to automatically identify and label military hardware. The output is the kind of intelligence that once required a national spy agency. The images of the Ford were captured in late January 2026. The F-22 is at Ovda Air Base in Israel, and the support aircraft at Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia followed. The Defense Intelligence Agency assessed that Iran was using Vision's imagery to plan missile and drone strikes in near real time. At some point during the conflict, the US government asked its own commercial satellite companies to stop publishing imagery of the region. Planet Labs and Vantor complied. The Chinese companies kept posting. A Washington Post investigation later revealed the full damage Iranian strikes had inflicted on US bases, the same damage the blackout was meant to hide. The images America wanted off the internet stayed up on a Chinese company's feed while that was happening. On May 8, 2026, the US State Department sanctioned 3 Chinese space firms, Earth Eye Company, for allegedly providing direct satellite imagery to Iran on request under a deal signed in September 2024, Vision, for tracking US military assets using open-source data, and Changguang Satellite Technology, whose Jilin-1 constellation of more than 100 Earth observation satellites capable of sub-meter resolution imagery is believed to be one of Vision's primary data sources. China's government denied any state links to the company's activities. Within days, both Changguang and Vision were publicly communicating as if no sanctions existed. Under China's 2021 blocking statute, Chinese companies are legally permitted to ignore foreign sanctions that lack UN Security Council authorization. The statute was built for exactly this situation. The sanctions have no enforcement mechanism that reaches inside it. The images are still up, and the technology that produced them costs nothing and requires no government backing, commercial satellites, public tracking data, or AI processing, all of it available to anyone motivated enough to combine them. Sanctioning Vision changes nothing. A dozen companies could build the same tool tomorrow. The 2026 sanctions are on the record. The capability is not going away.